thanks for joining. If you're new here, I'm Wendy and this is Nina's Jewels. My husband and I buy things at garage sales, flea markets, thrift stores, liquidation pallets, just about anywhere we can find things to sell online and flip for a profit. If that's content you're interested in, you're in the right place. Please make sure to hit that like button. Today's video is going to be what sold for the week of March 12th through 18th. We were actually on suspension for 3 days this week. For the full story, I'll link the video above at the end of this video and in the comments below. When you're on suspension with eBay, you lose the ability to post new items. So when we were notified that we were on suspension, we found out that we would not be able to list any new items. We had the ability to draft items and save those drafts, but we didn't have the ability to list any new items. So what we did to try to leverage the time is we drafted up as many items as we could, and we had those items on hold, ready to post for as soon as our suspension was up. So our suspension lasted for 3 days, and I don't remember exactly what days during this particular week the suspension was, but it really affected our sales. In fact, I'll put up a chart over here that will show the major dip in sales that occurred during that week. In fact, it was probably the worst week of 2022 that we had. It affected our sales drastically. So we are definitely avoiding any future suspensions in the future. Not that we were looking to have one this time, but we are definitely avoiding it in the future because it affected us greatly. The eBay algorithm likes you to have likes you to be listing constantly. So not listing for 3 days, not having buyers watching your items, not having eBay showing your items to buyers, that really affects the eBay algorithm. We made more sales than I thought we would. We made 38 sales in that week. And what I figured out is that the sales that we made during those 3 days that we were on suspension were sales with buyers that we had already had a connection with. So if we had already made an offer to a buyer, they had the ability to purchase that item from us. Or if a buyer had already been watching one of our items, they still had the ability to make that purchase or extend an offer to us. Or if they were already watching an item, they would just be able to purchase that item outright for our asking price. But eBay was not showing our items to new buyers at all. And we weren't able to list any new items at all. So when you're not able to have that activity with eBay and list new items and have new buyers looking at your items and have that constant activity with eBay, it kind of snowballs you down a hill with the eBay algorithm to have Cassini, or the eBay algorithm is called Cassini. It has Cassini think like, well, this store is not very successful. This store doesn't make a lot of sales. This store, buyers don't like this store. And so it doesn't, then when your store comes back online, it says, well, it didn't look like for the past 3 days this store had any activity. So now it doesn't want to show you to anybody. So you've got to work even extra harder. You've got to work extra hard than to get your store back into eBay's good graces or Cassini's good graces. So we did that. I mean, we had a bunch of drafts queued up and ready to go, and we're sending those off into eBay once the suspension was lifted. But it was definitely hard to crawl back out of that hole once we were in it. But we have now fully recovered, and we've had some of our best sales days and weeks since the suspension. But definitely that is something that we are going to be avoiding in the future. So check out the previous video where we explain exactly what happened. Sometimes you aren't, you don't know that you're breaking a rule. Sometimes accidents happen and it's just unavoidable. And sometimes you know better. I don't know. I think our suspension may have been a little bit of a combination of both. We didn't know that we were breaking a rule, and maybe we pushed the limits a little bit. So, but you know, it's definitely something that we will not allow to happen again unless it's just out of the blue and an accident. But let's dive right into what our sales are and get started on what we did manage to accomplish to sell during our week of suspension. So the first item was a 2022 McDonald's Happy Meal toy that came from one of our personal Happy Meals because we source even when we're eating. And that was a Stitch plush toy. It was new in the package. Sold for $8.99. We considered our cost free because we were eating that food anyway. Next up was a Dr. Oz magazine. Came from the lot of free magazines that I got on Nextdoor. It sold for $12.99, which was our full asking price and no cost to us. Off to a good start, no cost on the first two items. The next item was something we got in the Goodwill bins. It was a great find. It was a new open box Lord of the Rings Trivial Pursuit game. So it was out of its cellophane wrapper, but all of the items inside were still in their cellophane wrappers. It sold for $65 even on best offer, and we had paid 67 cents. We averaged our cost of goods on that trip to be 67 cents each. Next up was a pair of Signature by Levi Strauss women's jeans that we got at the Goodwill bins. They sold for $23.18, and for some reason I have these listed as 0 on our spreadsheet. I don't know what happened. I probably had them in the wash or something when I was doing my average, and then brought them back upstairs and just put them on there for 0 because I had already averaged it out, and I was like, I'm not averaging this again. So I said they cost 0, which we know is not true, but you know, it was already worked out by the math. Next up was a women's REI yellow camping shirt that we picked up at a thrift store for $1.89. It sold for $19.98. Next up is a Victoria's Secret knit tote bag that we got in the Goodwill outlet for $29.99. No, wait, that's not how much we paid. That's how much the buyer paid. They paid $29.99 and we paid 61 cents. Because that would just be crazy if we paid $29.99. Next up was an UMG women's off-the-shoulder embroidered tunic. It sold for $22.38 and we paid $1 at a garage sale. Next up was a Mary Kay brand new Time Wise cleansing bar, soap bar. We got it at a thrift store. We paid $3.24 and it sold for $24.99. We got a couple of Mary Kay things at this thrift store and they both sold really quickly. So I would definitely pick up any Mary Kay new items like this again. Next up was a Sunny Life mini travel size charades game. It sold for $15.99 and we had paid $2 at a garage sale. Kind of took a long time to sell, so probably not something I would pick up again. Next up is a set of 3 Lalaloopsy mini doll accessories. They were like small Barbie size accessories. They belonged to my daughter. They sold for $7.18. Next up was a pair of Banana Republic women's dress pants. We got those at a thrift store for $3.79. They sold for $25 even. Next up was a pair of J. Crew leopard print calf fur flats. They were brand new. They didn't appear to have ever been worn. We got these at the same thrift store we got the Mary Kay soap. These sold for $32 even, and we had paid $8.66, and they went I think to the UK through the global shipping program. We got positive feedback on those. I'm not surprised. They were in perfect condition. Next up was a women's Tommy Hilfiger full like flare denim elastic waist skirt. The elastic waist was like real wide. It was, we purchased it at a garage sale for 50 cents and it sold for $22 even. Next up was a genuine Harley Davidson fleece throw blanket that we got at an estate sale for $3.79 on half price day. It sold for $29.98. Next up was a Chica's Fashion blue satin embroidered. It was embroidered with a dragon bustier. And we had gotten this a long time ago at a garage sale. We paid $4 and it sold for $29.99, but we had really bad pictures for a really long time. And then I guess I was looking through our listings and I was like, those are really bad pictures. We need to retake those. So I put them on, the pictures that we had were not on our model. So we put them on our model and retook them with our new lighting setup, and it sold really quickly after that. So next up is something we got in a big bag of toys at the thrift store. It was a Melissa and Doug wooden toy, the truck part of a horse carrier. It was just a replacement part. It sold for $11.18 and we paid 14 cents for this. And next up was something, I think I got this from one of my kids, like I stuck it in their stocking and I found it in my son's room, I think. And I was like, he's never going to use this. He's got Apple AirPods now. So it was just a pair of, little headphones. And I think I got them at the dollar store. So these sold for $8 even. We got positive feedback on these. Next up was a set of scrapbooking metal brads. They're about this big. These sold for $8.99 and we had gotten these at the Goodwill bins for 68 cents. If you're enjoying this video, please make sure you hit the like button. Next up is a vintage Playboy that we got from the big lot of vintage Playboys. This was the December 1978 edition. It sold for $18.99. We had gotten this on the Nextdoor app. We paid $1.43 per issue. Next up was a lot of two Smothers Brothers records that we got at an estate sale. We paid 30 cents for them and they sold for $8.78. Next up was a cool find because we had bought some vintage 1930s, 40s men's hats and women's hats at this estate sale. We haven't sold a single one of them. And but inside the box of one of the men's hats, we found underneath the cardboard insert, we found this feathered hat band. And the hat band sold for $23.98. It didn't fit on any of the hats that we had, so it was just like kind of a bonus. We actually said that we didn't pay anything for it because we didn't know it was in there. So it sold for $23.98. We said our cost was $0 and we got positive feedback on it and we still have all those dang hats. That's just the way it works. I probably need to lower the cost on those hats, but we do have some really cool old vintage hats. I think I'm kind of emotionally attached to them and I probably priced them too high because I thought they were so cool, but I need to go in and lower them. Next up was a Sun and Sky blue beach bag. It was new in the package. We got it at the Goodwill bins. It sold for $7.18 and we had paid $1.33. Next up is something that we bought. We thought we needed it to go with our Roku stick a long time ago, and then we discovered that we didn't actually need it. So I don't know why we didn't return it. It's just one of those things. It also sold for $7.18, and we got positive feedback on that. Next up is a metal frame kit from Nielsen and Bainbridge. It sold for $39.99. This was something that we acquired from another business that we own. It is old stock that business doesn't need anymore. Next up is another magazine from the free lot of magazines. It was Coastal Living, the December 2017 issue. It sold for $7.98. Our cost was $0. Next up is a brand new sealed DVD called History Mankind. Sold for $9.99. We got this in the Goodwill bins. We paid $1.41. Next up, we got this at the same trip to Goodwill. We paid $1.41 for this as well. It was $13. It sold for $13.99, and it was a Breeze replacement cable TV remote control. And if you're enjoying this video, please make sure you hit that like button. Next up was an Aurora brand new with tags, orange tabby plush kitten or cat. We got this at the thrift store. We paid $3.24 and it sold for $24.99. It was a really cute little plush. We don't pick up a lot of plush unless it's new with tags, it has a good sell-through, or if it's vintage and has a really good sell-through. But we are really flush with plush, so we try not to pick up too much anymore. We're really pretty picky about it anymore. But we do sell a lot of plush. Next up is a pair of Carter's infant light pink crochet Mary Jane booties that were on a like 1930s or 40s baby doll, composite baby doll that we got and sold with a lot of dolls that I had purchased from someone. And we've sold all the dolls but one. And these booties were modern booties that were on this vintage doll, so I knew that they didn't go with it. So we took them off and sold the two separately. Anyway, the doll had sold a long time ago, and these booties just now sold for $13.99. And we said that our cost was zero because I had made the purchase for the doll, not the booties. Next up was a Nintendo Wii game, Avatar. It was just the disc, not the case. It sold for $11 even, and we had paid $1 at a garage sale. Next up was a pair of women's dress pants by Investments. They sold for $22.99, and we had picked those up at a garage sale for $2. Next up was a 2021 McDonald's Happy Meal toy. It was from the movie Luca, and this was in a bag of toys from the thrift store. It sold for $11.98, and we had paid 43 cents. I noticed that a lot of these Luca toys have been pretty popular. Out of all the McDonald's toys that we sell, the Luca ones have been some of the more popular ones. So I would pick those up if they were new in the package, if I saw them laying around at a garage sale or something, definitely. Next up was an audio tape set called the Singing Bible, like an audio cassette tape. And I think it had like 6 tapes in it. It sold for $19.99, and we got that at a thrift store for 33 cents. Next up was a pair of native kids slip-on shoes. We got these at a flea market for $3, and they sold for $19.98. Next up was, I'm going to tell a whole story with this one, but this was one of our toner cartridges that we got from the toner liquidation lot. This one sold for $23.99, and we had paid $3.19 for all the toners. This one, we had an item not as described return opened on it, and I refunded the buyer. But let me back up and tell you a whole story about toner. Most of the toner that we sell, we ship it off and we get positive feedback on it, and everything goes perfectly fine with it. But we have just had a rash of item not as described returns on several different things, not just toner. But, and not only just item not as described, but just returns in general. If you're a seller, I guess you probably, I'm assuming, but we have this issue where they just come in waves. It used to be that they would come in threes, but lately they've been coming not just in threes, but in waves, where it's just multiples at a time. And we're definitely in a wave right now where we have just been getting, like, we think like, oh, finally, this one that we have right now, this one's going to get closed out, and then we won't have an active one, and then another one gets opened. And so I'm just trying to be patient with it, and I feel like, we'll finally crest this wave and it'll be over, but we can't seem to get out of it. I don't know what the deal is. It is just, we are in it right now. We are just in it, and I'm trying not to get frustrated. But this whole toner situation had me real frustrated, because it wasn't this one, but we had a toner that was in a previous What Sold video that at the time I recorded the video, the buyer had not opened the return. But the buyer for that toner, opened an item not as described return and said that it was defective and it didn't work. And, you know, I mean, of course that's possible. Things happen, who knows? Maybe it got shaken around too much in shipping, who knows what happened. So it got opened and I asked him, you know, was there any damage on the packaging? He never answered, I never heard back. Oh my gosh, I'm not even kidding you right now. A return just got opened. A return just came through on my phone as I'm sitting here talking about it. I'll have to look at that later. But oh, I kid you not. Okay, that just happened. That is just funny. Okay, so anyway, back to the story. That's probably going to be for toner. Anyway, I probably just jinxed myself. But so they said that. So I asked, you know, did it have any damage? And then I never heard back from the buyer. Never heard a word from them. Never heard a peep. That is always a red flag to me. If they open the return and then refuse to communicate with me afterwards. So I did ultimately get the item back, and when we opened the box of toner, the outside box of the toner was not damaged at all. It had no damage on it, but inside the box was a very clearly used toner cartridge. Had toner dust all over it. It was very obviously their old toner cartridge that they just stuck in the box. So I contacted eBay and said, you know, this buyer has returned their used toner cartridge inside our box, and they're trying to say that it's a bad toner cartridge. This is not acceptable. We're not going to give them their money back. They're returning their trash. This is not okay. They're not returning the item that we sent to them. Well, we escalated the return, and wouldn't you believe it, eBay sided with the buyer and said there's no way for you to prove that that they're returning the wrong item to you, and we now have a defect on our account because of it. So just absolutely, I'm so absolutely disgusted with the eBay system that they would side with the buyer. So frustrated about it. And then just right on the heels of that, this next item not as described gets opened on this toner cartridge, on this what's sold video. And I was like, oh my gosh. And we barely made any money on this one because it was shipped to New York and we had free shipping. And I was like, you know what? I didn't have the mental energy for it. I mean, almost always I will have the buyer return it, but I had so little faith in eBay backing me up if that's what was happening with this buyer. And I did not want to pay for the return shipping label back from New York because then we would just lose so much more money that I just blocked that buyer, gave them their money back, and called it good. And anyway, I'm just so disgusted with it. And then that brings me to a whole other situation of having buyers return things and just completely abusing the item not as described. And I'll bring up some more specific things in future videos because we've had people abuse it with clothing, people renting clothing from us, returning obviously worn clothing, people coming up with the most ridiculous reasons to return things, just blatantly lying about returning things. And then sometimes, you know, a lot of times we will have people just return things because they don't fit, and that's fine. You know, we don't have a problem with accepting returns like that. We will always happily refund their money. But I'm just feeling just disillusioned with the eBay's return process in general. And then that brings me to saying that I'm just feeling really disillusioned with selling clothing in general. I'm just feeling incredibly disillusioned with selling clothing. Not only because I do feel like people rent clothing from us sometimes, but also because we get so many returns on clothing. We get so many returns on clothing. Many times it's valid, many times it's not valid, but also because clothing is so much work. It's so much work, and then that's the highest number of returns that we get. And because we get the most questions about those items. We take so much time to input item details, measurements, so many details in a clothing listing, and people will ask questions that are in the listing. People just do not read the listings. And so it's extremely frustrating to open up a question and then have to say to the buyer, the information that you seek is in the listing, or just, pull the information out of the listing and say, this information is available in the listing, but I'll provide it for you here as well. It's just frustrating because it reiterates how often buyers do not read the listing, and that just is frustrating. It's like, why am I bothering to put this information in the listing? The whole clothing thing is just feeling, I'm like, is this worth my time? Is this really worth my time? So we've been accepting a lot of lower offers on clothing to try to clear them out. We're considering having a garage sale to clear out a lot of our clothing items, to just liquidate it and really focus on hard goods and items that we enjoy selling more. So anyway, let me know your thoughts on that. Are you primarily a clothing seller? Do you sell clothing and hard goods? And what are your thoughts on how they compare? It's something that we're considering refocusing, and that's why. So we have a few more things, and actually up next is a clothing item. It's something that we got in the Goodwill bins. It's a men's Wrangler size extra large chambray pearl snap Western shirt. We got it in the bins. We paid 66 cents and it sold for $14.99. It sold really quickly. I think I probably underpriced it, but it had some like yellowing on the collar, so I felt bad about pricing it too high, but people they probably didn't read the listing that it said, even though it said that it had that, so they probably didn't read the listing. Next up is another clothing item, a women's teal basket weave sweater that we got in the Facebook Marketplace garbage bags of clothes. It sold for $12.78 and we paid 67 cents for it. Next up was a lot of 3 scented soaps. They had like a candy theme. We got these at doing retail arbitrage. We paid around $3 for them. They sold for $22.99. And last up was another vintage Playboy. This was the March 1976 issue. This magazine was cursed. I mean, seriously cursed. It might have been in that same video that I'm going to link at the end of this and in the comments below, but if not, I'll link this video as well. This magazine got taken down off of eBay for a policy violation because they said that it violated the eBay's adult items policy because it showed nudity. But the thing is it didn't show nudity. We had covered the nudity. And when I purchased the Playboys, I very carefully read the policy. I read it like 3 times because, I care about my eBay account. I did not want to have a policy violation. I wanted to make sure I'd never listed any adult items. I wanted to make sure that we followed the policy. So I saw that you could not show nudity. I read what eBay's definition of nudity was, and I covered the eBay's defined nudity on the listing. I used computer-generated graphics to cover the nudity. And they still took it down. They very obviously did not actually open the photo of the listing and actually look at it. They just blanket took it down. So I called eBay and I said, this followed the policy. Please look at this. And the customer service rep looked at it. He agreed that it 100% followed the policy and asked if I wanted to submit it for reinstatement. I said, yes, please. He did. The next day, I woke up to a message from eBay's reinstatement department saying, I'm sorry, we're not going to reinstate your listing. Your material is offensive and it's not getting reinstated. And I was just like, this is ridiculous. Why bother having a policy if you're not going to follow your own policy? And so I actually wrote a letter to the editor on e-commerce bites, which I'll link down below. You can read it if you're interested. I was just so frustrated because it very clearly followed their policy. There's no way that an an objective person could look at that and say it did not follow eBay's policy. And so we sold that, that Playboy on another platform. We sold it on Etsy for $12.99. It got shipped off to the buyer. And about 2 weeks later, the buyer contacted me, very nice buyer, so nice, and said, I see that it still says it's on its way to me, but it's not here yet. And I was like, oh my gosh, that definitely should have been there by now. I'm so sorry. And I looked at the tracking and I said, I think it's probably just lost in the mail. Do you want to keep waiting or do you want me to refund you? And they said, no, I really want this magazine. I'll keep waiting. And I knew because when my issue had been taken down, I saw that everybody else's issue of that particular issue had been taken down on eBay. So I knew this particular issue was hard to come by. So I said, okay, I'll circle back in maybe in a week or so. And if it's not there yet, we'll refund you. So I actually got busy and forgot, honestly, because I'm not on Etsy very often. And then after about 2 weeks, I still hadn't heard back from the buyer. But after about 2 weeks, I remembered and I was like, oh my gosh, I wonder if it ever got there. And I went back and looked at the tracking and it said on the tracking that it was on its way back to me. So I reached out to the buyer again and I said, hey, listen, it says it's on its way back to me. Do you want me to refund you or how do you want me to handle this? And they said, no, just don't refund me yet. Let's see if it makes it back to you. Let's see what happens. And I said, okay. So I said, don't worry, we're going to make it right with you. We're not going to leave you in the lurch. So I waited a little while longer, like maybe a week. I didn't want to wait too long and miss out on, I didn't know how Etsy's refund policy worked. So I waited maybe a week longer. And then at that point, the tracking said intercepted, which was so weird. Never seen that before. The USPS had intercepted it. And so at that point, I contacted the buyer and I said, listen, it says intercepted now. I don't even know what that means. I've tried to research it and the only time I saw the word intercepted on anything, it had to do with customs, and this was not an international sale. So I said, at this point, I'm going to refund you. If we ever get this item back, I'll reach out to you and we'll work out a sale. So finally, weeks later, maybe not weeks, days later, my postal carrier knocks on my door and he says, hey, I've got bad news. And I was like, what is it? I'm freaking out. So, cause we're friends with our postal carrier and he's like, you owe me $3.83. And I'm like, okay, for what? And he hands me what I know immediately when he hands it to me what it is. He's like, for this. And it's that Playboy. And I'm like, it's that intercepted Playboy. Like what? Well, I guess there was something wrong with that buyer's address and they couldn't deliver it because for whatever reason, even though he had confirmed that his address was correct, for whatever reason, it could not be delivered. And I don't know that I have a clear understanding of why. And they were returning it to me with postage due. And I still don't really understand why, and my mail carrier didn't understand why either. So I gave him the $3.83. And at this point, it's just been a few days since that happened. I'm just trying to decide, do I want to relist that item? Because we're in the hole on this item for sure now. Do I want to relist that item and try to get it back out to that buyer? Or is this item cursed and do I just not want to mess with it anymore? I don't know. I know that buyer really wants it and I want them to have it, but man, am I going to get charged again if it doesn't make it there? I don't know. What do you think? Let me know. I'm feeling really torn on it because, it's part of our mission. The mission at Nina's Jewels is to get items in buyers' hands that they really want, have items not ever make it to the landfill. That is our mission. That is our mission. So I don't know, but that item is definitely cursed, So last but not least, I always go over the my husband's collectible cards that we list. We have thousands of them listed and thousands yet to list. This was by far the smallest week in sales that we've had, due no doubt to the suspension. We sold only 4 cards for a total of $24.95, which all things considered is great dollar-wise because we sold some higher dollar cards. But that pretty much wraps it up our sales for the week. It was an interesting week, even though it was a low sales week. So if you enjoyed this video, please make sure and give us a thumbs up. And more importantly, please make sure that you are subscribed if you're not already with the notification bells turned on. We are getting so close to reaching our subscriber goal of 100 subscribers. And when we do, we're going to be giving away $100 in gift cards. We'd love it if you would be a part of that. So thank you so much for joining again. I hope you enjoyed this video and we will see you guys next time. Bye.